thought about the fact that you'll be able to hear all of the editing from the jumps and the music. Professionalism at its finest. Oh, this is so fun. Sitting here in the cozy room with a candle and a coffee, getting in the mood to tell the shit show. Hi everyone, my name is Vanessa. I'm 27 years old and I am diagnosed with a dissociative condition. If you don't know what a dissociative disorder is, Google it. I'm not gonna go over the basics. I am sitting here today to tell you all the most fun story in the planet, to some jazz music because mood. And I hope that you can hear me okay. I set up a microphone in my room, I have a cup of coffee, super cozy. And one of the things that I will tell you, I will need to give you some background, but one of the things that I will tell you about dissociative conditions is that usually you have a very hard time tracking time. So I have a problem tracking time. Probably the timeline that I'll give you will not make sense. Yeah, it's very confusing. When we were very young, like maybe 6 or 7, my parents started taking me to a 6 or 7. So my parents started taking me to, I don't even know what kind of doctor it was. I know that I was having nightmares, I couldn't sleep, and they took me to several different kind of doctors. Like they checked me for circulation problems, heart problems. They also did this weird test of like not gluing, but sticking these little electrodes to my head, and they were trying to find out what was wrong with me. And I don't know exactly what they thought, like they saw that was wrong with me. I am really not sure. I don't remember. I know that I passed out a lot. I passed out maybe 20 times in my life, maybe more. So that's a lot. Maybe it was because of that I was going to all these doctors when I was a kid. So that was it about it when I was a kid. I went to a couple of shrinks, and I'm using the word shrink on purpose, and I didn't stick with them for long, and I wrote it out until I was 18. So when I was 18, I went to a doctor because I was really, really, really depressed. And he ended up putting me on this antidepressant medication. And I just thought about the fact that you'll be able to hear all of the editing from the jumps and the music. Professionalism at its finest. Okay, so yes, antidepressants. So we went to a doctor when we were 18 because we were depressed, and he put us on these antidepressants. And when we were 18, we were in the last year of high school. We're from Brazil, by the way. Originally, we live somewhere else in a different country today, but we were born and lived in Brazil until we were 18. So I was 18. I went to this doctor because I was depressed. He gave me once. I went to him once, and he gave me this antidepressant medication. And for many years, unexplainable reason, after I got these meds and I was on them for like, I don't know, maybe 4 months or something like that, I had this wild thought for a little while that I wanted to become a diplomat. So that was a brilliant idea, being a diplomat. And after 4 months in this antidepressant, I just got up left Brazil, got accepted. So I studied like a horse throughout my last year of high school. I took extra lessons. I was studying from like 7 in the morning until 10 in the evening and then driving back home. I was being insane. And I got accepted to two very, very nice universities. And I just dropped them both and moved to Peru to learn Spanish because I wanted to become a diplomat. Yeah, so I got up and did that, and I was on this antidepressant medication for like 3 months, and then I was going to travel to Peru, so I got this prescription for 6 months, which is the maximum that you can take to a different country, because I was gonna go study Spanish in Peru and become a diplomat, and I have no idea where that came from. The 2 universities that I got accepted to had nothing to do with that. And I worked so hard to get accepted in those universities, and I just got up and left, which to me, for many, many years, didn't make any sense. So I was on this antidepressant medication for the first 6 months that I was in Peru. And eventually I ran out of the pills because I overstayed my stay. Because of some unnecessary details that I will not get into, but amusing, wild stories. Where was I? I should have brought a notebook so I can write down to myself where I am when I'm dissociated. A note for the next time. I ran out of the pills when I was there, and right before I ran out of the pills, I went through a shitty situation. Let's put it like that. Like, I'm gonna try to not curse in this channel. I would try to not curse, but you're gonna hear a bunch of videos with cursing. Not me, not my fault. System responsibility. So the thing is that I was very lucky throughout my growing up that I somehow never did anything terribly regrettable or dangerous. I think that I don't know who's responsible until today. Like, we're diagnosed for a year and I still don't know who's responsible for preventing us from doing the dumb crap we wanted to do. So when that shitty thing happened and we ran out of the pills, I started to understand back then that something wasn't right, and maybe beyond the level of depression. And I was also like quitting an antidepressant cold turkey and completely idiotic, irresponsible situation. I was a fool back then, and I was lucky. I survived my irresponsible, dumb stay in Peru, and I ended up moving to a different country afterwards because I met an amazing person and I moved across seas. Yes, so I moved to a different country. Once I got to this different country, maybe I'll mention it eventually in the video, and then I'm just like, different country, like a freaking idiot. Okay, so once I got here, and I was here for a while, I ended up going to a small town that was very isolated and very different from the large cities of Brazil that I was used to. So I got pretty isolated, and before I had dealt with like nightmares and headaches and this kind of stuff, but maybe a migraine once. That was the most horrible thing that I had ever experienced in my entire life. And once I moved to this isolated city, and I was isolated, and another crappy situation happened with some people, and I remember one day just hearing like shouting inside of my head, and it was weird. It was really weird because it was as if my own thoughts were shouting at me. Everything that I thought was shouting. If I tried to read a book to see if these thoughts would stop shouting, and they like the words on the page of the book were being read to me inside of my head, but shouted. And I heard it shouting for, I don't know, maybe it was even a few hours. And I think I just fell asleep at some point, exhausted, and I was nothing. Like, my own thoughts were shouting, and it never sounded from outside of my head. I knew that it was like as if someone had turned up the volume like this, turned up the volume of my thoughts by 100-fold. Yeah. And that was the first time that I was actually, I guess, aware, because like I said, in Peru I was being wrote down. So everything that I did over there that was weird, I was just disregarding it as being irresponsible. And once I had this screaming thoughts that I had never heard anyone talk about before, it was when I was like, okay, so I have to do something about this. It's not just being depressed and like, oh, will I outgrow or something. My head is shouting at me. And I remember that I used to say a lot that it felt like my brain was sabotaging me. That's how it felt. Like my brain was just trying to drag me down. Like, it was a weird time. And I barely had any words to explain any of this. And I also had all of these physical symptoms of just feeling like crap out of the blue from one second to the other, which basically later I found out that I was having panic attacks on a daily basis. And I would just feel like crap, and I would go to the doctor, and I would get to the doctor and they would ask me, what are you feeling? And I would just say, I don't know. I couldn't even tell that I was having a panic attack. I would just feel horrible, and 15 minutes later it was gone and I was fine. And I just had no idea what was going on with me. I thought that I was making it up to begin with. I thought that I was being a crybaby. I mean, I never thought that I was possessed or something like that. I mean, not as an adult, no. It wasn't within my realms of logical possibilities. I thought that I was crazy. Even though the word crazy doesn't mean anything, you know, but like, I thought that I was crazy. And so yeah, I had these screaming thoughts, and I decided that I needed to see someone because it was beyond depression, and I was having screaming thoughts and nightmares every single night that I couldn't sleep. And I had had nightmares ever since I could remember. So I had never properly slept in my entire life up to that point. And at that point, I think I was already like 22. Like I said, I'm 27, like born in 1993. This body was born in 1993. So, and I had the psychiatrist booked for maybe a week, a month. I have no idea. I had it booked for some time. And on that day that I knew that I was going to this psychiatrist, I was sick. And I don't remember much of that day. I don't know if I was actually physically ill on top of just, like I said, I passed out 20 times in my life. So I am prone to passing out, let's put it this way. And that day that I knew that I had a psychiatrist, I took a bus to go to this doctor. And I believe I was feeling ill, like physically ill as well. And I passed out on the bus. And I hit my head on a handhold. I mean, I didn't really hit my head on the pole. And that's the funny thing about passing out, which until today, like, the only explanation that we have for this passing out is a dissociative condition, because there's nothing physically really wrong with me. So when I fell, so my partner was with me, and I fell, and he saw that I hit my head, but I didn't really hit my head because the way that I passed out, and because I passed out so many times in my life, I kind of keep awareness like during the fall, and I hardly hurt myself. So I knew that I hadn't really hit my head on a pole, that I softened and like, you know, moved away, and I wasn't hurt, and I didn't really hit my head, but he didn't know that, and he had never seen me pass out before. So he got me out of the bus because I was getting up to get out, and I just dropped and hit my head. So he dragged me out of the bus, and he sat me on the side.